Does anyone actually remember Despicable Me? Considering this movie released over 13 years ago, it's not exactly uncommon for most people to misremember what it's really all about. So what's the deal with Despicable Me? Is it really what you think it is? Well, despite all the childish merchandise and horrendous memes your mother probably posts on Facebook, turns out this movie is actually not at all what you might remember it being. If you're chronically online like everyone else who watches this channel, you probably have this preconceived notion about this movie that it's, well, pretty stupid. I mean, how good can a movie really be if the main thing it's remembered for is these weird yellow things that talk in complete gibberish? And like, what are these things even? Why do they look like Mighty Beans? And don't get me wrong, this movie is straight up just brainless at times, but it's also surprisingly mature at times, choosing to tell a story that I'd call emotionally coherent and just kind of sad. So today I'll be watching the very first Despicable Me movie in full to find out if it's a super secret banger or if it's a steaming pile of white hot garbage. I'll be explaining in depth what happens in this movie while also providing my opinion on things here and there. So grab your copy of Super Smash Bros. Melee for the Nintendo GameCube and let's jump into a movie that's often misunderstood, the one, the only, Despicable Me. Also, I'm not going to shove an ad in your face here. All I ask for is that you like the video if you enjoy what you're watching and subscribe to the channel if you want to see more. On to the video. Our adventure begins with a stereotypical American family on vacation. We got the father with a cowboy hat, the mother with a Karen haircut, and the child on a leash? Doesn't get more American than that. $300 million. This family is visiting the pyramids in Egypt when all of a sudden, the kid escapes his harness, he climbs some scaffolding, and then falls off and straight up dies. Yep, there it goes. Another kid losing to gravity. The good news is the kid doesn't actually fall to his death because turns out a super evil villain stole the pyramids earlier that week and replaced them with safe inflatable versions. That kid got really lucky. That's good RNG. I'm not really going to get into the logistics of how someone could steal over 5 million metric tons of granite and limestone. So for now, just imagine some guy had the gun from Portal and just went crazy on the pyramids. This is when we skip ahead to Gru, who's the main character of this movie. Gru is cold-hearted and kind of a goofy guy whose main goal is to become the world's greatest villain.
And then act like I don't know nobody.
He's voiced by Steve Carell, who everyone knows, I'm sure, and is extremely funny like 8 out of 10 times. It's clear from these opening shots that Gru is 100% alright with using his own weapons and creations to get what he wants. He even jokes about killing the neighbor's dog at one point. That was honestly kind of wild. Wasn't expecting that.
You know dogs, they go wherever they want to go.
Unless they're dead.
Gru goes inside his wacky cartoon home, but before he can properly relax, he gets a knock on his front door. Who could it possibly be? My money's on the Amazon delivery guy. That guy is always up to something. No, it's actually these 3 young girls who are just trying to sell some cookies or something. Gru wants nothing to do with that, however, so he does a 300 IQ gamer move and pretends he's not at home.
This is a recording.
The longest pause ever. That's actually funny. Anyway, a few moments later, after the girls leave, and Gru finds out that another villain stole the pyramids recently. Meaning the villain who stole the pyramids wasn't Gru. It was another guy. He couldn't even steal the pyramids? Wow, Gru is such a loser. This is when Gru decides it's time for a serious meeting in a secret basement lair. There's some random cartoon shenanigans since he's evil and stuff, and while entering the secret lair is when the viewer is introduced to the minions. Everyone already knows the minions, okay? I don't need to go over who they are. Right? Except not really. Does anyone actually know what these things are at all? Like, they're these weird yellow alien looking dudes. Some of them have 2 eyes, others only have 1 eye. It's hinted that there's some kind of lab experiment maybe, but they're all kind of stupid and childish for some reason. Also, there's like 1 million of them, so if they really wanted to overthrow the government, they probably could. That's not part of the movie. It's just a thought I had. Anyway, so Gru's finally got everyone huddled together. It's super clear that the minions love this guy. He's like Billie Eilish if she did a concert in front of a bunch of depressed high schoolers. They go crazy for him. Gru talks about how although no one here stole the pyramids, they still stole a lot of stuff, and they had a really good villainous year.
We stole the Statue of Liberty.
What?
The small one from Las Vegas.
That's honestly still like huge though, isn't it? Despite all that, none of it is really as evil as you might think it is. So Gru's come up with the ultimate plan. The plan that will keep him remembered forever. His plan is, and I'm not kidding here, to steal the moon. What? I know this is a cartoon, okay, but just humor me for one moment. Sure, moving the moon around would be pretty iconic. I'm sure everyone on Twitter would be talking about it in real time. But I also think moving the moon around would cause major disruptions in the Earth's oceans, possibly leading to multiple massive natural disasters, probably ending humanity as we know it. But again, you know, it's just a cartoon. You might be thinking to yourself, how is he actually going to do this? Well, Gru's idea is to ask the bank for a loan so he can then build a rocket, and then, once he's in space, he can use a shrink ray he stole from the Chinese, I'm not kidding, shrink the moon, bring it home, yada yada, super evil villain. I haven't heard of a plan this good since Luffy planned on never finding the One Piece, ever. God, that show is so long. Anyway, Gru is now at the bank, but while he's waiting, he meets a guy called Vector, who thinks of himself as the sexy George Clooney type, but he's really just an overly goofy guy and kind of a nerd. A little later, and Gru is pitching his idea to the bank, and to everyone's surprise, the bank actually likes it a lot. The only problem is, you know that shrink ray that Gru was going to use on the moon? Well, he doesn't actually have it yet. Why wouldn't you bring the shrink ray before going to the bank? I will never know. Another big criticism the bank has towards Gru is that he's getting kind of old. Apparently, Gru is like 50 years old in this movie, which honestly, I would have never ever guessed. He looks a little younger than that at least. Like I probably would have said like 40, like max 40. This is when the scary bank guy mentions Vector, the guy Gru met earlier. Vector is young, full of new ideas, and also he just stole the pyramids? That's right, this guy, he stole them. He's the mastermind. He's the guy that did it. So now Gru gets no money, no sympathy, no text, no females, L plus ratio plus big nose. He also freezes Vector's head because, you know, f that guy. We hate that guy. We then skip directly into the next scene, which is just Gru stealing the shrink ray. And like, he just straight up does it. It's a cool scene, I guess, but there's like no one stopping him the entire time. That is until Vector shows up and steals the shrink ray from Gru while flying away. That's right. Vector must have followed Gru all the way to China just to steal it from him there and then bring it back to his house in San Francisco. What a guy. Before he dips though, Vector ends up using the shrink ray on Gru's ship, so it gets really small, and eventually he gets away with the weapon.
I hate that guy.
Me too, Gru. He looks like that one dude from the Big Bang Theory. Anyway, a bit of backstory now on the three girls that were trying to sell cookies to Gru earlier. Turns out all three of them are orphans. They live in an orphanage ran by Miss Hattie. I'm not gonna lie, Hattie is kind of the second coming of the devil. She's a horrible person and forces the girls to sell cookies every day to fund the orphanage, I guess. I don't know why. She makes them do it. Also, if the kids misbehave, they're put in a box or something. That's definitely illegal. Someone please call Child Protective Services right now.
FBI, open up!
These girls are all pretty innocent. They're all just struggling to find a home. Deep down, they just want to feel loved, which is actually kind of sad. But skipping ahead now, this all connects together because Gru is now trying to sneak into Vector's home to steal the shrink ray back. Also, I just want to mention the Chinese never actually make an effort in this movie to get their weapon back. He tries disguises, he tries gadgets, but nothing seems to really work. All this while Vector is playing Valorant at the highest level in his basement. This is when the three orphan girls show up and try to sell him cookies. Gru is watching from a distance and kind of smirking because he's excited to see them get blown up or something like that. But to his surprise, Vector actually lets them inside because he has a sweet tooth and is probably just extremely lonely, let's be honest. After seeing the girls get inside, Gru gets his second big idea of this movie. Gru decides that he's gonna adopt these three girls himself so that he can then sneak into Vector's house and steal the shrink ray. There's a lot of steps to this plan, I won't lie. He dresses like a dentist, he uses his level 100 Riz to convince Miss Hattie. I'm pretty sure he forges all of his documents, because like, how else would this guy be able to bring three little girls home with him? At first, the girls are all excited by the news until they actually see him, which is when they pack it up. There is one girl though, the youngest one named Agnes. She's just happy to finally have someone to hug. She's great, we love Agnes. All my homies love Agnes. Hey, let's check in on Vector real quick.
Tiny toilet for little tiny baby.
He's so weird. He's such a weirdo. Anyway, the girls arrive at Gru's house and they immediately recognize it because they tried selling cookies here before. Remember? It was like a day ago or something. They enter it and it's filled with a bunch of sharp weapons and evil bad guy stuff, I guess. Gru is also very cold towards them, giving them only newspaper to do their business on. Beep beep boop boop. At one point, Gru thinks that one of the kids actually dies and he just shrugs it off. She doesn't actually die. It's just a cartoon haha. But Gru obviously didn't care. A little later, and Gru and Nefario are in the basement lair working on some stuff while the girls are left upstairs. They make a weird fart gun for some reason. But perhaps the most important thing, they also made some cookie robots. These are straight up just little drones that look like cookies. I'm sure you can tell what these are for. This is when the girls waste no time in immediately finding the lair themselves. Like, this has to be a record or something. They do it right away. They just show up. They're walking around wondering what all this science stuff is naturally, which is when we get probably the funniest scene in the entire movie. At least for me. Okay, I'm not sure why, but this got me in tears the first time I watched it.
Can I drink this?
Do you want to explode?
This is when Agnes's toy unicorn gets incinerated, so Gru gets these three minions to get her a new one. We need it ASAP. Okay, she's literally about to die. There's this whole bit of the minions doing wacky stuff in a supermarket. I won't go over it really since it's not that important, and I'm guessing everyone here already kind of knows how the minions act. Part of me really does enjoy their time on screen, and the other part of me wishes they would all simultaneously combust into a million pieces. So you know, there's like pros and cons to these guys. Later that night, Gru is still cold towards the girls, but the minions did kind of succeed their mission as they bring Agnes a brand new homemade unicorn toy. It's not exactly the prettiest thing, but it does show that the minions at least care and put in the effort when needed. So you might be thinking that this doesn't seem like anything other than your average kids movie at this point. And except for the blatant child abuse and the off-screen pet murders, you're probably right. But I promise, okay, things get a lot deeper from this point onward. The next day, and Gru wants to deliver the cookies to Vector, since that's the only reason he adopted these girls, remember? The girls say no because they have a big dance recital coming up and they need to go to the studio to practice. Remember this thing, it's pretty important. Also, who is paying for these dance lessons? I'm guessing the orphanage was, but like, you know, they're not orphans anymore, so that wouldn't make sense.
You are coming, right?
Of course.
Why is that mom wearing an I Love Mommy shirt? Anyway, it's time to deliver the cookies to Vector now. Little do the girls know, however, the cookies have been replaced with tiny robots. Also, I want to mention how the girls are still doing this whole cookie thing, despite not being at the orphanage anymore. Like, you'd think they wouldn't have to deliver them, since they got adopted. Someone else from the orphanage would do it now. Maybe Gru is lying to them and making them deliver cookies that they don't even have to deliver, but then Vector would probably get an actual delivery for the cookies that he bought from someone else, and that never happens. So, I don't know, maybe I'm missing something. That doesn't make sense at all to me. So there you go. The robot cookies do their thing, which allows Gru to enter the house undetected. But just as he's about to leave, the robots say, actually, never mind, and close the wall on him so he can't escape. Now Gru and some minions are trapped inside Vector's house and need to get out with the shrink ray somehow. They enter a vent, which is obviously human-sized. Seriously, no vents are this size. Okay, what is this, a Spider-Man game? What are we doing here?
I'm already at full health.
I obviously can't show this scene in its entirety here, so a reminder to watch this movie yourself if you haven't in a while. Also subscribe. Gru escapes the house and now has the shrink ray, and the mission was successful. The only thing really holding him back now are the girls. So I'm not kidding, he devises a plan to get rid of them forever. I'm pretty sure you just adopted them, so there's a bunch of recent paperwork that would trace them directly back to you, but he's got the spirit, I'll give him that. There's this big carnival nearby, so Gru devises his third big plan of the movie. He wants to distract the girls at the carnival with fun activities, so he can then freely leave them, never to be seen again. This plan completely backfires though, since not only do the girls need an adult to get on most of the rides, but also when the girls are cheated out of a win, Gru wins it for them and starts to develop some legitimate feelings towards them. You see, earlier in the movie, Gru spoke to his mother a couple times, and it was very, very apparent that Gru was completely neglected as a child. His father is never shown, which is part of it, but his mother also never gave him the time of day. He'd be really proud of his own accomplishments, but Gru's own mother never so much as congratulated him, let alone showed him actual affection. Reading into it a bit deeper, Gru was set up to fail, essentially. Having absent parents and no real friends growing up, a beautiful and creative mind lost because there was no one to care for it. It's actually extremely sad and probably hits close to home for a lot of people. If you're watching this and struggling in any way, just remember that you are loved, and at least you aren't playing League of Legends on Twitch for 12 hours a day.
It sucks playing this shit.
As mentioned, Gru ends up developing some real feelings for these girls, not in any weird way, but in like a father figure type way. This is the first time that we know of where Gru is legitimately happy sharing a moment with other people. He finally has friends that give him attention and that praise him and that care for him. Sadly though, nothing good can last forever because this newly found happiness directly contradicts the moon mission. You'll see what I mean, more on that later. Gru calls the bank guy and shows off the shrink ray, so now he can hopefully get a loan or something. Sadly, this doesn't happen because as we stated before, Gru is just too old now. So although they like the plan, the bank wants someone else to pull it off.
You don't seem terribly.
Damn, bro's got the golden laptop. What is that, a Intel i9? This triggers even more flashbacks from Gru's childhood. Even when he built an actual functioning rocket at the age of 6, his mother still didn't care. This guy's got trauma, what can I say? But then, we get this movie's biggest twist yet. We find out that the bank guy is actually the father of Vector, the dorky orange guy. Maybe Vector is also adopted? Cause like, I'll be honest, I don't see the resemblance. We were led to believe that Gru was just old and losing his mojo, but turns out the bank was playing favorites this entire time. If you choose to take anything away from this movie, let it be its extremely accurate portrayal of nepotism in the real world. Like, this dude has been given literally everything. Okay, he didn't have to work for any of it. This is when Vector finds out about the shrink ray missing, so now he's got to come up with a plan to seal it back. We're just going back and forth here. During this time, Gru, who's extremely depressed right now, gives a speech to all his minions about how the bank has declined his request at a loan. This means that they can no longer build the rocket, which means they can't steal the moon, which means they'll fail their mission and be forgotten forever. But then, again, everyone's really sad, but this is when the girls hand Gru their piggy bank in what's probably the movie's most wholesome moment. Like, these four have really connected throughout this journey. It's great to see. Here's $2.15. build a rocket. This motivates all the minions to start pulling out cash, which, like, how do they even have money at all? Maybe they just steal wallets all the time, but it would take a lot of wallets to get the $1 billion required for this journey. We get a quick montage of everyone helping out and building this thing, kind of. The mom even shows up and shows the girls some baby pictures of Gru. I guess now she wants to be a good mother out of nowhere. She was literally laughing at her son like 3 days ago over the phone. Not sure where that came from. The night ends with Gru giving the girls their long-awaited goodnight story. This is peak wholesomeness. Gru finally learning to open himself up to someone, and the others finally showing their love and care towards Gru. And this is when we get the deciding moment in this entire story. Remember how I said this newly found happiness will get in the way of everything? Well, turns out the day Gru planned to steal the moon is also the same day as the girls' dance recital. Gru obviously doesn't want to miss the girls' performance since he wants to be a good father figure who's present for his children, but he also can't just change the date of the rocket launch since it's astronomically expensive and counting on many things to happen on that specific day or something. Dr. Nefario, who's more mission focused, hates that these girls are becoming a distraction, so the very next day now, and it turns out that the doctor called the owner of the orphanage to come get the girls back. And then she just does. By the way, Miss Hattie takes the kids and returns them to the orphanage and puts them in boxes for some reason. Listen, I've never adopted a child before, but surely you can't adopt 3 of them and then just return them a week later, like they're furniture from IKEA or something. Anyway, the kids are pretty sad and feel a little betrayed, and rightfully so. Gru himself feels extremely sad. He was finally comfortable in life, and yet again, it got ripped away from his own arms. He tells himself that he's just not meant to be happy. Now, I know these themes aren't necessarily not made for kids, but I'd argue that it takes a good deal of emotional awareness to really understand the depth of what's going on here. But Darzii, I knew all the meanings and themes at only 5 years old. Congratulations. Who asked? With nothing else to distract him, the big day has come and Gru decides to set off on his mission to steal the moon. Just before entering, a minion hands Gru the ticket of the girls' dance recital. Now, while Gru launches into space, a couple things of note actually happen. First, Vector shows up and tries to stop him or something, but because he's just kind of a guy, he fails miserably. And second, we see his regular ship and even a minion that got shrunk earlier turn back to normal size, meaning that the shrink ray's effects are only temporary. So if Gru brings a shrunken version of the moon back down to Earth, it could be very, very bad.
We have to warn him, and fast!
Bro's playing Mario Kart on 50cc right now. Gru shrinks the moon and starts floating off into space with no cord attached or some kind of jetpack or something. He'd probably just float forever here if this was real, honestly. But while floating, he sees the ticket, showing him what's important and reminding him that he could still make it. I'm not going to sugarcoat this part. Gru hurries up and makes it to the show, but sadly he was too late and missed all of it. Normally I'd leave it at that, but Gru actually finds a note on his reserved seat from Vector saying to bring the moon to him, implying that he's kidnapped the girls. We're in the last 10 minutes of this movie and we can finally say that we know the main villain has done something evil. Terrific. So these last moments are kind of cool, actually. Gru really wants his girls back and gets all serious and badass. It's like he put on the Venom suit and he's ready to do whatever it takes. There's some really cool slow-mo bits, but eventually the fight gets taken to the sky. This is when Vector is getting away with the girls, while Gru, Dr. Nefario, and the minions are all following closely behind. The girls end up getting free somehow, and there's this epic moment where they end up jumping from ship to ship. All of them except the oldest girl, and arguably the one most like Gru, at least regarding her trauma, that is, since she gets held back. But thankfully for her, the moon is getting really big, really quick. It pushes Vector away and allows her to break free. How crazy. Gru and the minions save her because they all love each other and it's one big happy family now. Meanwhile, the moon becomes full size again while it's in Earth's atmosphere, might I add, which would definitely f some shit up, but whatever. Vector was on the moon when this happened, so I guess he's dead now. El Bozo. The next day, Gru is actually viewed as a hero in the news since he actually returned the moon, which is probably the best case scenario, I won't lie. Gru becomes more of a softie, finally hugging the girls and kissing all the minions on the head. Because in the end, is there anything in the world stronger than love? Some would argue that the machine used to move the literal pyramids at the beginning is probably stronger, but you know, that doesn't matter. And that was the movie, Despicable Me. There's this ending scene where everyone's dancing together, even Vector is on the moon dancing, I guess, so he's not actually dead. But yeah, that was the whole movie, start to finish. Obviously, there's some detail I didn't mention since I didn't want this video to be an hour long, but all in all, this movie actually kind of slaps. Much like myself, I'd imagine a lot of people who haven't seen this movie in a while remember it being this brain rot, silly comedy since the minions are involved, and the minions don't exactly have the best rep nowadays. But I can confidently say that the first Despicable Me movie is extremely unique and does a really good job at containing a deep and emotionally involved story while also being harmless fun for kids to laugh at. It's a banger. What can I say? It's probably not what you thought it was. If you have an extra $1, you can become a member to the channel. You get your name at the end of all my videos. I'll also be starting some member exclusive content soon, so if you care about that, that's an incentive. Thank you so much to all my members. I can't tell you how much I appreciate your contribution, truly. Paula Abdul scores this one a solid 3 goofy minions out of 5. And yeah, thanks for watching.
Can I drink this?
Do you want to explain?